Hello my loves and welcome back. I am back here on my sofa ready to have a little chat with you. First of all, I wanted to thank you for your overwhelmingly positive response to the last video that I put out that was financially focused and where I was talking about decluttering and using the money that I made from selling decluttered items to pay down my mortgage. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will try and remember to put a card up above somewhere for you to click on, and you can kind of catch up by watching that first. Today though, I woke up to the announcement that UK inflation is now at 10.1%, the highest it's been in 40 years. And it's really prompted me, or it prompted me this morning to scribble down a list of all the things that I've been thinking about doing in order to try to kind of offset the cost of living increases, rises, crisis, however you want to describe it. These are things that I've been thinking about doing, or I've kind of tentatively started doing, but actually haven't really fully committed to. And this morning I thought I really need to. Before I get into those 12 things that I've come up with, I just wanted to make it clear that in no way am I or my partner or my household in financial dire straits at all. We are very much in a position where we're kind of, I always think of us as the middling sort. We're somewhere in the middle with our finances. The way I would describe it is that bit of kind of comfort or wiggle room that you have between what's coming in and what's going out is starting to narrow. And what it feels like has happened is that it very gradually started to narrow, almost imperceptibly to start with, and then all of a sudden it feels like, oh wow, this doesn't feel quite so comfortable anymore. A little bit like the walls are just kind of closing in on you. That's how it feels. So if you are in complete financial distress and dire straits because of what's happening to the economy at the moment, this video isn't going to solve those problems for you. You must absolutely 100% get professional qualified help with that. Use resources in the UK like the Citizens Advice Bureau. Go on the BBC website, the government website. Even local council websites have got information on them at the moment about how to deal with the cost of living crisis and the things that you need to do in order to sort out debts, utility bills, etc. Those of you that are in a situation perhaps a little bit more like the one that I've just described, you might find that the things in this video are useful or interesting or food for thought. But what I will say is they're very much personalised and tailored to my situation, my household, my finances, and the type of property that I live in. But I do think that some of them certainly do apply across the board. Let's get cracked on with it. Here is my list, and I've written things down because, you know, I'll forget. So the first thing on my list is something that I have already done, and that is I've lowered the temperature of the hot water flow from our combi boiler. Now, I say this with lots and lots of kind of cautions and warnings and things around it. If you don't have a combi boiler, you really shouldn't be doing this. You need to look into it really carefully, because if you have water that's held in a hot water tank, it has to be kept at a certain temperature to make sure that it is safe. But if you were on a combi boiler, then you could save anything from, well, I was looking at this online and obviously all the websites say slightly different things, but essentially it seems to be between about 6 to 10% on your gas bill. But you really must know what type of boiler you've got, do your research, look into it properly before making any changes. So the second thing on my list is, again, something that I have been thinking about and sort of started doing, which is to use my microwave more often. It is one of the cheapest ways of cooking and reheating food. The way I've been using it is to make sure that whenever I am reheating food, that the vast majority of the time I'm reheating it in the microwave rather than covering it in foil and popping it into the oven for, you know, anything from 20 to 40 minutes. 5 minutes in the microwave is just so much cheaper. It's pennies. There was a really interesting graphic on a BBC article that claimed that when you're baking a potato for 10 minutes in the microwave, well, I say baking, you're not really baking it, are you? But cooking a potato in the microwave for 10 minutes, it costs 5p. Whereas when you cook it in the oven for 90 minutes, it costs £1.20, I think it was. So that is a huge difference. Now, I know what you're thinking, because it's probably the same as what I'm thinking, that microwave jacket potatoes don't taste that great. But what I was thinking is I could do 5 minutes in the microwave with them and then chuck them in the oven for maybe 15 to 20 minutes just to get more of a crispy outer skin on them. And the other thing I remember about growing up in the 80s is that we used to use our microwave quite a lot. And I remember my mum had a microwave cookbook and we used to cook all sorts of things in there. I remember her cooking cakes in there, and I remember cooking bacon in there, and just all sorts of things. And something that I read recently was how to poach an egg in the microwave. So I thought what I might do is try and hunt down some secondhand microwave cookbooks and just have a little look at the things that I would be happy to make in the microwave as opposed to in the oven. Now, I'm not going to switch all of my cooking over to that, but I definitely think increased usage might be a way forward. And then I think similar things apply to slow cookers and air fryers, things like that. So definitely do your research, think about the appliances that you've got, and just see if there's a percentage of your cooking / reheating that you can shift onto these more cost-effective appliances. Oh, and on a side note, another thing that I read recently is that you should make sure when you're cooking on gas, if you have a gas hob, make sure that the flames don't lick the outside of the pan, because you're losing a lot of the heat doing that. It should only ever be going up into the pan itself. So that's a little something that I'm going to be looking out for as well, just to make sure that I've got the right size pot on the right size hob. Now, number 3 on my list is an absolute classic one. It's about cancelling a subscription, and Netflix, I'm afraid it's going to be you. You are on the hit list. My other half and I realised the other day that we do not watch that much on Netflix anymore. It's just the occasional thing that crops up. So what we're probably going to do is I've just paid for the next month. So we're going to make a list of, we're kind of going to go through Netflix, make a list of all the things on there that we kind of have said, oh, I'd quite like to watch that, I'd like to give that a go. And for the next month, we're going to watch them, and then I'm going to cancel the subscription. Number 4 on my list is definitely something that is very much tailored to me and my lifestyle and household, etc. So I have an allotment and I have a reasonable sized back garden. And one of the things that I've really got to do is to step up growing my own vegetables and herbs. Now, the thing that I need to be careful of is that gardening can become an expensive hobby if you let it. But my back garden is free, I guess, and there's a lot of space there that I give over to untidiness and rubbish and also flower and shrub borders. Now, I do want to keep some of those because I want to maintain and increase the kind of cottagey garden feel that I have in my back garden, but actually there is room to increase the amount of produce that I grow in my back garden. And I have just today renewed my allotment tenancy, and that costs me £25.50, I think it was. 25 quid basically. £25 for I think it's 25 by 50 foot half plot that I have there. I do have another YouTube channel actually where I'm documenting my progress with my allotment and my back garden and growing and things like that, so I'll pop a link to that in the description below. And anything in future that I make that's about offsetting the kind of rising food prices by growing my own, those videos will all feature on that channel, so by all means pop over and have a look. One thing I beg of you though is please don't subscribe if you're genuinely not going to watch the videos and you're not interested in gardening and growing your own food. If you are though, please come over, have a look at some of the existing videos on there, and subscribe and like a few and all of that stuff. Back to the point that gardening can become quite expensive if you let it. I'm definitely someone who's fairly frugal in the garden, I would say. I recycle lots of things. I swap a lot of seeds and plants and pots and things like that with my dad, who's a gardener, with my mum, who does a little bit of gardening, and with my neighbour who has a very productive plot in the garden next to mine. So there are ways and means. Oh, also I swapped some stuff with a fellow allotment holder. So as I'm getting to know people over there, I think that could increasingly be something that happens and that saves me some money. So there are some ways of kind of keeping those costs down. You can buy seeds in a sale. I know that Wilco's has a sale kind of every autumn, and you can buy packets of seeds from anything from like 5p to 50p. So there's definitely ways of keeping the costs down. And I think as long as I'm growing high yield vegetables, things that I actually eat, and also things that I can preserve. On the subject of preserving, you can see I'm getting quite excited now because I like this topic. On the subject of preserving, one of the things that I kind of thought to myself was a chest freezer would be fantastic. They're not as expensive as I thought they would be, but it's still a big chunk of money. I don't know, possibly invest in one of those if I think it's worth it. I have got a fridge freezer, so there's a small freezer section that I can pop some things in. But what I have got a lot of that I don't fully utilise properly is a lot of cupboard space in my kitchen, which then led to me thinking, well, I can dry my own herbs. I could also learn how to pickle things. And what's the other one? The other one, like pickling, but not pickling, in a jar. What am I thinking of? Stop screaming it at the screen. I know, fermenting, that's the one. So I could learn how to ferment produce as well, and then that way I'm preserving food in a way that utilises space that I've already got. So this is a big one for me. I think you can tell this is a big one for me. I'm excited about this one. This is something that I definitely want to do because it's also, interestingly, the type of lifestyle that I want regardless of any cost of living crisis. I'll stop talking about it now and move on to number 5. Right, number 5 is something that apparently, this was on the news, 90% of households are already doing this and like thinking about it, which is to delay putting the heating on. So I am very lucky. I live in East Anglia, which is one of the warmest, and if not the warmest and driest parts of the UK. So I'm experiencing a very mild October. The temperatures this week are 15, 16, 17 degrees Celsius, which is a perfectly comfortable temperature, certainly during the day, and there's absolutely no need to put the heating on. Usually we have a kind of a fairly flexible rule that we won't put the heating on until the 1st of October. And what we've done this year is we've said it won't go on until at least the 1st of November. At the moment, like that's going to be absolutely fine. There's no problem with that because the weather is on our side this year. The other sort of part or parts that are connected to heating this winter. Again, this is nothing new. This is all stuff that you're probably already doing, but we are reducing the number of hours a day that we have the heating on for. So instead of 2.5 to 3 hours in the morning, which is what we did have our timer set up to come on for, we're just going to reduce that to an hour. We just kind of need half an hour to warm the place up to kind of make us want to get out of bed, and then another half an hour while we're showering and getting ready. And then in the evenings, I mean, the heating used to come on maybe about 4 o'clock, something like that. Sometimes I think I even put it on slightly earlier if I was working and I got cold. But actually we're now thinking, do you know what, it's jumpers, it's layers, it's thermal underwear, it's all of that kind of thing until we get to perhaps sort of after dinner time, so maybe 6-7 o'clock ish, and then the heating will just go on for 2 to 3 hours, enough to warm us up in the evening and make the bedroom, you know, warm but not too hot, and kind of get us off to sleep. And we've got no need to, we've never had the heating on overnight because it's just it's too hot, and we've got blankets and things on the bed and a winter duvet and stuff like that. So that's oh no, there was something else, wasn't there, heating related? Oh yeah, that was just turning, like using a thermostat on the radiators and just turning off radiators in rooms that we're not using and turning them, making sure that the heat is at a point where it's not excessively hot or hotter than it needs to be. So yeah, making sure that we're adjusting the thermostats properly, kind of on a room by room basis. Number 6 then is looking at thermal lined curtains. Now, the 2 rooms that this is probably going to be most significant in, there's 3 rooms I would say, but 2 for the most part, is the room that I'm in at the moment. This is our living room. It's where we spend a lot of our time when we're indoors, and it's where we spend our evenings together. So this, and there is a draft that comes, so we've got double glazed windows that are fitted effectively, but you can still feel it's very cold. I wouldn't say it's a draft, but you can feel that it's cold because one of the sofas is in front of the window, and when I sit on that, I'm just like, oh God, it's cold over here. And the curtains that we've got at the moment are just very thin ones that aren't really doing anything to keep the heat in. So if we could switch those out, again, it's one of those things like the chest freezer, we've got to kind of weigh up whether it's going to be worth the outlay on, but I think it probably would be. And then also the curtains in the bedroom, which annoyingly, it's a, oh God, what is it? Double aspect. So there's 2 windows. Could be very expensive. This could be a lot of curtains. And then the third room that I was thinking of is the kitchen. The kitchen is one of those kind of add-ons that you get a lot in the UK, that's kind of added to these very old terrace properties that used to just be kind of 2 up, 2 down, and then suddenly a bathroom has been stuck on the back, and the kitchen's been stuck on the back, and there's not really an effective way of heating them. So possibly some curtains in there, maybe even one across the back door might be a way forward. But I think the other 2 rooms, it's more important to do those first. So thermal curtains. Oh, and then the other one, you see this stupid opening here that someone, you know, before us has put into this house. So with these terrace properties, the rooms, there's one room at the front, there's one room in the middle, and then there's the kitchen behind. In a lot of them, people have removed this wall that's behind me and had the whole thing open plan, or they are as they were originally with just a doorway here rather than the I'm going to put a photo up so you can see what I'm talking about. We've got some kind of stupid halfway house where you have this really wide opening with no doors or anything on it. It just suddenly occurred to me about how cold the back of the house is, and how much of the heat that we're using to heat this front room in the evenings is just disappearing off into the freezing cold kind of back of the house. So what might be a good idea, even if it's only temporary while we think about a more permanent solution, is again to put a big thick thermal lined curtain across that opening, either on this side or on the dining room side, depending on what feels more or less attractive. A lot of thermal curtains. The other thing that I'm going to do, and it really needs to be done in the next 6 weeks, which is very specific to the property that I live in, is I am in the process of exposing the floorboards in that middle room, which are for the most part in reasonable condition, but they're pretty gappy. They were never really designed to be on display or anything. And I am going to have to go around and seal the gaps between those floorboards. The floorboards are either going to be varnished, like stained, or painted anyway, until such times as we can afford to spend a bit of money on a nice carpet for in there or some other type of flooring. And honestly, the draft that comes up through gaps in old houses, particularly floorboards, it's ridiculous. You can stand there and it almost feels like it's kind of billowing up through the floorboards and making your clothes move. So that definitely needs doing. Number 8 then is, again, kind of thinking about blocking drafts and things, is particularly the front door. I think is quite drafty, so the front door is going to get a draft excluder. I might even make it, I've got loads of old scraps of fabric. I also knit and crochet, so I'm sure I could come up with a really fun draft excluder for the front door, and then again possibly for the back door as well. That shouldn't be too much of a problem, and that might be quite a nice project to do in the evenings as well. Number 9, I've sort of mentioned already, I've put that I'm going to invest in some thermal underwear this year. I'm not going to spend very much on it because I have got lots of clothes that I can layer up, but I'm thinking a really good base layer might be a cost-effective way to go. And number 10, I've kind of alluded to as well, in that are just blankets basically. There's one blanket somewhere on here behind me, over there in the corner now, because I was using it last night. But there's a blanket on one sofa, there's a blanket on the bed. I need to dig out a bigger blanket for the bed that actually kind of covers the whole thing rather than just my side of the bed, and a blanket for the other sofa as well. So I'm going to have a little look through what I've got. A lot of the blankets that I've bought over the years, they're kind of very thin. I need to think about whether I can knit or crochet something that's a lot thicker and a lot warmer. Basically just blankets. This is a point about blankets, finding blankets, secondhand blankets, thick blankets, good blankets, and getting them onto sofas and onto the bed. Number 11, again, I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, the decluttering in order to pay down the mortgage. I think today I've got my first payment coming in that I will be paying off the mortgage, and I'm going to try and do a little video about it, probably like a YouTube shorts rather than a full video. I don't think it warrants a full video. We'll see, as I haven't done it yet. But the idea is that making these payments off the mortgage, you can choose to either shorten your term or to lower your monthly payment. And our mortgage is our biggest monthly payment. It's close to £900. So anything that we can take off that just makes all of the kind of offsets the other increases, like the increase in the cost of food and so on. There is a separate video on this, and it will be kind of become a separate series. So I'll pop a link to that somewhere, possibly up above, so that you can check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Yeah, number 12 is something that I used to do quite a lot of when I worked full-time as a teacher, because quite frankly, I'm talking about batch cooking, by the way. When I was teaching, there wasn't that much time to prepare like decent meals and stuff. So I did used to cook stuff quite a bit at the weekends, so that there were a few like really good home cooked meals for throughout the week. And obviously my other half did some cooking as well, and somehow it all sort of balanced out. Now I'm interested in doing it because it does save money as well, cuts down on a lot of food waste, and actually just makes evenings a little bit less frenetic and more relaxing if you've got something that's ready that you can just pop in the oven. So I'm going to be doing that, a lot more batch cooking. And interestingly, that is also going to be a series on my personal, sorry, I've got an itchy eye. So I'm winding down now, so I'm just, scratching my eyelid in front of you because, who cares? On the other channel, the gardening channel, there is going to be a playlist on there that is about batch cooking, preserving the food that I grow and all of that kind of stuff. So again, if that floats your boat, head on over and give me a little follow or whatever over there. Right, that's me done with my list. So I'm going to disappear now because I've got quite a lot to do, haven't I, on that list. I'm glad that I've got it all written down actually, because I will be able to keep going back to that and checking the progress that I'm making against that list. I'm not going to add anything else to it yet until I have accomplished most of those things on the list. And I might report back at some point just to see how things are going. Let me know in the comments if these things are similar to things that you're thinking about doing. We can pool our ideas, because there are loads and loads of different things that we can all do to kind of make our homes and our lives run a little bit more cost effectively. And thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a bit of time with me this morning or afternoon, whenever this goes out. And I will see you back here again very soon.